So last time we reviewed JavaScript. In order to be able to introduce a JavaScript library this time, the JavaScript library is called D3.js. So if you just go to, I guess, D3.js, D3.js.org, they have their own site. They have their own GitHub repository, and they have a lot of examples, like everything that you can do, or many of the things that you can do with this JavaScript library. One of them is making that cool zoomable pie chart thing, and then zoom out. You also have, trying to find cool ones. Some are boring. This has like these cool transitions. I don't know how to do that, but you can learn. Let's see. There's many. And you can see more if you click on examples at the top of the page. And you can look through all of them. Line graphs, these gears that shift, and you can change how they shift. It's kind of crazy, but pretty simple. Gets boring after a minute. But in order to see a showcase of everything, there's this one called Showreel. Click on that and click on this video. You can see all of it because the other one is just 15 seconds. This is should be longer. Okay, that was pretty quick. But yeah, this just takes data. You just give it files of data, like map data, stock data. This is stock data, I think, for Apple, Amazon, IBM, and Microsoft. And it visualizes it. It's data visualization. That's what D3 stands for. Where is it? Data-driven documents, D3. So that's what we're going to introduce today. So the first step is in your gem file. You have all your default Rails gems, but also add this one called D3_Rails. And you just bundle install, and you should get no errors. Everything should be green. What else? In your application.js file that comes with Rails, this one, you have all these files, all these requirements, require this JavaScript library, require this one. You also have to require D3.v3. And then after you save that file, I don't think you have to restart your server, but if you have any problems, then just try restarting your server. And after that, you should have D3 ready to go in your app. And all you have to do then is write some D3 code. So I'll just wait if you guys are trying to set up.
I think you have to restart the server if you reinstall another gem. And in this case, if you had it already installed before if your server wasn't already running before you did bundle install, then you would have to restart it.
Yeah. And also, the things I'm going to be going through, kind of just stole off of some other guy. And if you go to YouTube and you search D3 tutorial, there should be a playlist of like 20 videos. And yeah, this one, D3.js tutorials by this guy named D3 Vieno. I'm basically taking you through some of those tutorials. But he like goes off with many examples, which can be good, but I'm doing like a more reduced, simple version. So yeah, maybe like star that or favorite, or I don't know. It's pretty easy to find. They're pretty useful. So I think that should be that. Now my controller and page setup, like last time, I have one controller called Pages Controller. It's just empty. We're not loading any data from any database. And then over here in my views, I have a Pages folder, and that's where all these views come from. In my layouts, like last time, application.html, I have a back and the yield to render each page. And in my routes, like last time, the root goes to home, pages home, and then in that template, I just loop through 1 through 8 and make a link for that level. We're going from level 1 to level 8, but I think today we're going to stop at 4. So next time we could do 5 through 8. But that's how that's set up. It's like last time, so. Oh yeah, and over here I have a controller which takes the pages symbol and then a block, and then the same loop 1 through 8 each, and then get level, and then I interpolate that number. Anyone need time?
Yes. Could you go back to your list of steps?
Instructions?
Yes.
I don't have any of that there, so. And like last time, this repository is going to be going up, so you're going to have all this.
Is it on your profile?
Yeah. Oh, it's not up yet. I'll have it up.
Do you have it last time?
Yeah, I sent a link of last repository. Last one was called a JS Playground, and now it's D3 Playground. So we're just playing around here.
The gem, did you put it into the application.js, or did you put that into the gem file?
The D3 gem,
Yeah.
I put it like near the top of the gem file. It doesn't matter where it goes.
Okay.
Sorry. But it's in the gem file. It's like out in the open. It's not inside one of these groups.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I guess we only need it for development because we're not taking this anywhere else, but just put it out here, it doesn't matter. And then in the application.js file, so app, assets, JavaScript, application, I have a line that, I have the gem, but then I have to require it in my main JavaScript manifest file.
What does that say? I can't read that at all.
Do we need to turn off these lights maybe?
It's just this really small. I just can't see.
I think it's gray on gray.
Yeah.
It says // equals require.
You're looking at them. Is that better?
It's just like the text is too small. It's not necessarily the grades. D3. Alright, I got it.
For some odd reason, when I do that, I get an error that says parsing error, unexpected token, equal sign.
Well, you need two forward slashes.
What?
Doesn't that comment it out?
Yeah, there should be a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a strange syntax. You need them to be like that.
Okay.
If you don't put the equals, it doesn't work, and if you don't use that, it doesn't work. It has to be like a combination of comment and an equals.
Yeah, the Rails system is looking at the comments specifically to load those JavaScript files. It's a weird way of loading things, but
Yeah, if you open up the developer tools in head, we should see that JavaScript library now. jQuery, turbolinks, D3.stuff. So this is the one that Rails generates when we write this line. Well, I guess you also generate this one. So it generates these two. All right, so I'm gonna go straight into level 1. It's just a boilerplate page. This is what the Rails generator makes. Pages, pound level 1, find me here. And all we're gonna do is, should have instructions. Select something on the page and change its contents. And then adding things to the page and give it a color. But we're not going to be using JavaScript or jQuery. We're going to be using D3. So we're going to be using D3 select and D3's append and D3's, changing colors and the extension. I'm also using CoffeeScript here, not JavaScript, just so I don't have to worry about parentheses and semicolons and all that. So the way to do this, you have to start off with D3. I'm pretty sure you just say select. I have a cheat sheet right here. Yeah. So you're going to select the paragraph elements. And then to change its contents, you just say text and then pass, whatever you want it to be changed to. And I wrote, D3 is taking over. So now, if we go to my template, there's only one paragraph here, so whatever's in here should change after I reload. I saved all my files, and it doesn't work. I lied. I did something wrong. Oh, right. That was in the instructions. So for a CoffeeScript, in order to call this method out here, you have to make this function like an instance method or like an instance variable. Like in Rails, you make your instance variables in your controller and then you can access them in the views. It's kind of the same with JavaScript functions. If you want to call them out in the views, you have to make them instance functions out here. Just put an @ That's not what they're called, instance functions, but it kind of makes them global. Like you can call them anywhere. Like right now, since there is no, I get this function is not defined. If I try to call that function, it doesn't exist. But now that I've saved with this syntax, with the @ in front, if I reload, this works. And then I've got this function working. It makes it like available to the console, to the views, to everything. So we got that part. Now, instead of selecting, add to the page. So we start with D3, and we're still going to be selecting, but we're not going to be changing anything. We're going to be, we select the body of the page, the body tag, and we append. Actually, this is going to be a few methods, so I'm just going to break it up into many lines to make it a little easier to read. We're going to append a paragraph tag, and then that paragraph tag, let's change the text to something. And then that same paragraph tag, give it a color. So all we did here was find a body tag, make a new paragraph tag, and then for that new paragraph tag, change these things, or set them. So its content should be this string, and that paragraph's color, font color should be red. So now if I reload, there's a new paragraph and it's in red. And when you're chaining like this, chaining methods, because this is CoffeeScript, you can remove them, remove the parentheses, just so there's less to look at, and it still works. Any questions? That was level 1, pretty easy. Now I'm just walking you through it. So this is like a new thing to append and then change its contents, but you're going to be doing that a lot with D3. It's strange at first, but you just have to practice it.
I guess the way to think about it is that before in Rails we were just generating HTML, sending it back to the browser, and that was pretty much it. Here, the browser has the HTML, and then we're manipulating the HTML on the client. You have to keep reminding yourself of that.
Alright, so moving on to level 2. Views, level 2. So in level 1, I had an H1 and a P, a paragraph. In this one, I'm just calling the JavaScript function because JavaScript is going to be doing all the work. So inside a script tag, just write the level 2 and the parentheses. And you can put this if you want. It doesn't really matter. That's pretty much it for the template. And for the level 2 CoffeeScript file, the instructions are make a canvas so we can draw on it, add a circle, add a rectangle, add a line. Now I'm not going to ask you how would you do this, because how are you going to know? But let's just go step by step. So to make a canvas, we do the same thing that we did, similar to what we did here. We find the body and we append something, except this time we're not going to be appending a paragraph tag. We're going to be appending an SVG tag. Now SVGs are used to make geometric shapes. That's what SVG stands for. Scalable. You know what the V stands for? I think it's geometry or something. I don't know, I spelled all of that wrong. SVG meaning. Yeah. So JPEG images are just pixels, but SVG images are like geometric shapes. And the advantage to that is that you can zoom in as much as you want and the image will still be crisp because it's just, you know, point A to point B and the browser renders that. It doesn't, yeah. So scalable vector. What was it, geometry? Did I get that right?
It's perfect.
Dang. All right, close enough. So that's SVG. We're appending an SVG tag, and I'm gonna cheat here because I don't have this memorized. I'm gonna be honest. We give it some attributes. So this SVG tag has to have a height, and it's gonna be 500. It's gonna have a width. Same thing, 500. And it's also gonna have a border just so we can see it, or else it's just gonna be white on white and you won't be able to, you know, see the canvas. So this is just CSS, putting it straight onto the page. It's gonna have a border with, you know, 1 pixel. Oops, gotta go to level 2. So that's our canvas. We can only draw inside of this if somehow the shapes that we're drawing end up outside. They won't be shown. So, you know, this is our extent. This is the extent of our canvas. We can make it bigger, just change these values. Change this to 1,000. But, just going with a square right now. Now add a circle. So in order to, if we want to add a circle to the canvas, we're going to need the canvas for reference, like a variable. So canvas equals, and then whenever we call canvas in the future, we're going to have that SVG ready to go. We don't have to D3 select SVG anymore. We just say canvas. And so to add a circle, we say append circle. It's pretty mind-blowing attribute. And you see how here I'm calling that ATTR method 3 times. You can kind of compact it. Instead of saying that, you know, multiple times, you can use a object, a JavaScript object, or as we know it in Ruby, a hash. And what a circle needs a center, which is like an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. And I spelled circle wrong. Circle. What else does it need? Diameter, right? Well, not really. I think it's just a radius. So the center X coordinate we'll say is 250. The you know, half of 500. The center Y coordinate will be same 250. And the radius is just R, and you know, 50. Now if we save it and reload, we won't. Oh, we will. We'll see a circle, and you know, you can change the color, but SVG is a little different. The attributes or the CSS for that, yeah, that doesn't work. In order to change the color of the thing, it's fill. So like fill the circle with red. So that's our first geometric shape. Well, besides the canvas, which is just a square. Questions? So instead of calling the attribute method 3 or 4 times, I just put it all into one hash and use the attribute method once. I made a canvas variable which references this SVG. Here, let's look at the markup just so You don't think I'm crazy or lying. So we just had this from the start, and then JavaScript or D3 put in this SVG tag, and all our attributes that we gave it in the CoffeeScript file are here. 500, 500, border 1 pixel, solid blue. And then we called canvas and we added a circle. So it put a circle tag inside of SVG, and it gave it all these attributes that we set inside of the JavaScript function. Is it possible to zoom in? Nice. Okay. Haven't lost you so far? All
No,
right.
it's just like a random curious question. If you like the canvas, if you wanted to fill the whole screen, then what numbers would you add for the width and for the length? Like in the,
If you wanted the canvas to be
to fill the whole screen.
the whole screen, so
Curious
in,
about the
yeah.
numbers and how you would-
so in JavaScript there's this thing called window, which is basically the window that the user has, and I'm pretty sure you can just say window width, and that. Oops, just kidding. I don't know. Let's Google it. JavaScript get size of screen. Screen height. Okay, I was close. So screen width. So that's how big, that's how wide our screen is. If I change this to like half, and then I run that function again. Oh, just kidding. Windows screen X. There's ways, but you know, JavaScript can like find that out for you, and then you could say something like width equals screen width. I think screen width gets the actual width of my screen and not just this window. So that's why I was trying to do window width, but that didn't work. You know, you can make variables like screen width and screen height, and then use those variables here. Oops. Oh. If I can spell. Then if I reload this, it should be pretty big. And it's off by a little because there's like margins and this back. But if I remove the margins and that, it should be full screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions? Random thoughts? All right. Add a rectangle to the canvas. So a rectangles need, I mean, it's basically a square. It's kind of the same thing as the canvas. They just need a height and a width. But, you know, similar syntax as last time, canvas append. And this time we're making a rectangle, except this is kind of long, so HTML and accepts this rect, rect. We're gonna append a rect element, and you know, just give it a height and width. So height 100, width 50. Let's see, what color should we use this time? Blue. Reload, and there it is. It's pretty boring. I don't think it's as exciting as this circle, but that's how you make rectangles. If you want to position it somewhere else, you can say, what's it called? Transform, translate. Then you can say something like 50, 50. Yay, it worked. So yeah, that's how you can position things.
We got the Japanese flag.
Another thing to note, XY coordinate. you would think that, you know, drawing on this thing would be something like this, where if you say x is positive, we go to the right, and if you say y is positive, or as you increase y, you go up, but it's the opposite. We're actually, you know, the canvas is more like this quadrant over here, where when x goes up, you go to the right, but as y goes up, the thing moves down. Does that make sense? Like we said, y was positive 50, but it went down. So you just kind of have to, you know, remember that. We're not starting from here. Pretend the origin is right here in the top left corner of the canvas.
Can you do negative? Negative 50.
For y, yeah, negative 50. So half of it gets cut off, but you know, this rectangle is like 100 height, and if we go negative 50, we only see 50 because the canvas, you know, it stops showing after, you know, its border.
How come the circle didn't appear on the corner?
Oh, because we said the center
Oh,
was going to be at 250, and the, you know, so over here we kind of fill this in, 250, 250, which happens to be the center of this.
that makes sense.
I don't know what happens if you don't say anything. Let's see. Yeah, it just appears at the origin, and you only see one quadrant of the circle.
So,
Okay, now we're going to add a line. So, canvas append. What's the syntax here? Line. Nice. And we do the attribute method. Another way, because this hash is going to be it's going to be pretty long, you can also make a hash like this, like an attribute 1, attribute 2, and just go on. And what a line needs is point 1 and point 2. And a point 1, you know, a point is made of a x and a y coordinate, and point 2 is also made up of a x and y coordinate. You could call this x1, y1, x2, y2. That's how you make a line. So let's just put those in. x1 equals 0, y1 equals 100, x2 equals 400, y2 400. Now if we save that, let's see what we get. Nothing. That's because our line is like 0 width, you know, it's very thin, it's like not there. So we need a few more attributes. There's this one called stroke, which is basically the color of a line, and you can say green, and then stroke width, like pretend this is a paintbrush, you know, the stroke color is green, the stroke width is going to be what, 10 pixels. Actually, this won't work because of this hyphen, so you have to wrap this in quotes and make it a string. So you see how I split this hash up into many lines? Okay, so now if we reload, there's our line. It's pretty simple, it's just 2 points. But what D3 was built for was to make lines with so many points that the line looks like a curve, how we saw in the preview, in the show reel. So this is just like very simple it's like one thing D3 is going to make easier for us. We won't have to calculate all these X's and Y's. It's going to do it for us. We just have to give it data. But yeah, that's level 2. We made a canvas, a circle, a rectangle, and a line. Questions? Go back to code. Explain something. Watch a video. Oh, okay. So level 3 is the template. It's just like level 2, except you change this to a 3. We're just calling the function. And the coffee script should be blank. Some instructions. Okay, so now we're actually going to be putting data on the screen. We're just going to make a bar graph. So now, right now, we're just going to be putting the data straight into the function, but most of the time, you're going to be using APIs and other files to fetch data. But we have to start somewhere. So data, an array. Let's say, what did I write? 20, 40, 50. So those are the numbers we want to visualize. It's 11 o'clock. Should we take a break?
Sure.
Okay, we're gonna take a break, get some water, use the bathroom. I'm gonna pause this.
Did they leave?
Then he had to run some errands, and then I don't know where he went. He just kind of walked out.
He said he had to do something. I forget.
Oh, okay.
Alright, so we're back here. We want to visualize some data. We're just gonna put it straight into the function. 20, 40, 50. 20, 40, 50 what? It doesn't matter. We just want to see this on the page as a bar graph. So let's do that. Like we did last time, we make a canvas. We say D3. We append to the body an SVG tag. SVG. We give it a height and a width. That's it for the canvas, and then we add the bars to the canvas. We're just going to be using the rectangle shapes that we did in the last level. So we say canvas dot. Now this is something that you have to do. You can't really explain it, but you have to say select all rectangles. Now, right now there are no rectangles on the page, but that playlist I told you about on YouTube, in one of the videos, he talks about select all and these other methods I'm going to get into. What was it? D3 tutorial. It's like, I think it's this one. Video 7 is where he explains it. I kind of don't understand it. I just know that you have to do it. But yeah, so select all the rectangles even though there are none. And then you bind these rectangles to the data. It's kind of redundant here, but this is the method and this is the variable that we defined up here. And then we use the enter method. It has parentheses like that. And I think the way I think of it, this is like an each. So for each element of data that we have, we're gonna, do these things. So this is kind of like an each. That's how I think of it. So each of these data elements, we're going to append a rectangle, and this rectangle is going to have some attributes. One of them is going to be a height, which will never change, so it's just going to be 50. The width will change. It depends on the, data. So what you have to do here is define a function, and you can just define it in line. So this is a beginning of a function, and this is like CoffeeScript syntax, so it probably looks weird, but you'll get used to it. And the parameter is D, which stands for like data element. To prove that it's this element of data, you can print it out to the screen. Say console log D. Oops. Okay, so it didn't work. What did I do wrong?
We have to return the weight from the function.
I don't know, that should have worked. I was just trying to, whatever. I was just trying to show, every element in there. But what I have here is, take this number 20 and multiply it by 10. And then this function will return 200, and that's what the width will be. And then it'll do that for 40 and 50. What else? Okay, it needs a height. We're going to use another function. So we can't have boxes on top of boxes, because if we just have it like this, oh, that's why, because we're not on level 3. Okay, so like I was saying before with this, see what happens here. Oops. Get a mess. Yeah, 20, 40, 50. So it's like an each loop. It goes through every element here, and it runs a function. So we're just going to multiply that value times 10 for the width. But we like all of them are stacked on top of each other, and the largest one, you only see the largest one because you can't see the smaller ones. So we have to give it like a placement. So we use another function, but we want to also use the index. So if it's like the first bar, place it on top. If it's the second bar, place it a little lower. If it's the third bar, place it even lower. So you can add a comma in here, and set another variable to I, which would stand for index. And then inside the function, you would have I times a number. And at first, I is going to be 0, so 0 times 100 will be 0, and the first bar will be placed at the top. But then the second bar, this will evaluate to 100, and it'll be placed 100 pixels lower than the other one, and then 100, 200, like that. So if we refresh now, we get our data in bar chart form. And that's it for this one. Any questions? This probably looks pretty strange. Like, where did this D and this I come from? I think it comes from this enter. It's really strange, but you get used to it.
Just like random question. Don't you you would use D3 if you wanted to do a data report? So maybe for an annual report or something like that. Or you
Yeah.
just use it anytime.
Yeah.
For anything.
It's for seeing any type of data reports on sales or stuff. You could use like a bar graph. You can do a lot of things. Whatever you can understand, whatever you understand, line graphs or bar graphs or pie charts. If you can get the data to sync up and work, you can do it all. It's pretty amazing. You don't have to rely on like Excel's limited amount of graphs and stuff. If you want to do something that they don't have, like Google Sheets, if they don't have this graph that you wish you had, hire a programmer, or if you know how, program it yourself. But yeah, this just takes this value, multiplies it times 10. This takes the index of that value, multiplies it times 100.
This is really cool. It's kind of intimidating, but looks really cool. You
Yeah.
can do a lot of things with it. I was just like looking into I think they have like a GitHub repository and it has like a bunch of examples and other people who used it and it just looks really cool.
Yeah. At first, like the examples help, but like if you don't know the syntax or the methods, you're like, what the heck? Where did this I come from? So we just have to walk you through the baby steps, and then after this, you should be able to tear apart the actual examples that they have, you know, piece by piece, and understand bits, and then play with it.
I guess just translate it into Ruby maybe.
Yeah. Right. This is still pretty simple. Like this is, soon we'll get to some magic. This is pretty simple stuff. Right, level 4. Let's see. So level 3 was just a bar graph. Level 4 is going to be a bar graph with linear scales. Okay. So level 4 template is just this, calling this function. Level 4, the CoffeeScript file has the, you know, global function level 4. So in the instructions we said the data we're going to use is 20, 40, 50, 70. Make this into an array. Okay, and here we're going to define the height and width. We're going to need them in many places, so we'll just make variables for them. So here I'm saying both the h and w variable will equal 500. I think we can copy some code too. So copy this, put it over here. This canvas part goes here. So we don't have to redo that, except this time we're using the variables. Add bars. So that's right here. But there's a few blanks. So if we try to do this right now, see what happens. Go to level 4. We're basically using the same code as last time, except with different data now. Instead of stopping at 50, we go all the way to 70. Level 4. So we see here, here, but then we see these 3. We don't have any values that equal each other. So what's happening here is these bars are actually, you know, this long or this long, but our canvas is a limited size. So what we want is, you know, depending on the largest value in our data, that should be the longest bar on our graph. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add some scales, and like it converts the raw data into like usable data for this graph. Does that make sense? Because this is like too long. It doesn't fit on the canvas, and we need our canvas to be 500. All right. See what I wrote. So first, we need a function to get the max value of that array. So we'll just make a variable, and it's going to be a function. So you need this pointy thing and these parentheses, and then some code here, and we pass the data. So this variable is going to get passed into this function here, and then we can say something like math max. This is like default JavaScript. Like this isn't J3 or anything. D3. Math max, apply. You have to Google this. I had to Google this to figure this out. It took me about 5 minutes, I think. So I don't know why you have to put null here, but you pass it your data, and so this function should return the max, the maximum value here, which should be 70. So just to make sure this works, let's print it out to the screen. Console log max. We'll use parentheses. Okay. Bring up our console. Didn't work. I don't think this needs to be a function. Okay, try that. Yeah, okay. So we have a, well, it's not even a function anymore, it's just a variable. Variable. For max value. From our data, yeah. Okay. Now, do we use max anywhere? Yeah, we use it here. Okay, now we need a function that looks at our raw data and generates a new width for that bar. Yeah. So here we're going to create a variable which is going to be, it's going to refer to a D3 function. You say D3 scale dot linear parentheses. Well, you could do it on the same line, and then you give it a domain. Like, this is the values that we accept or that are going to be coming in, and then we're going to give it a range, which is going to be like, this is the values that should be outputted. So the domain is going to, the smallest is going to be 0, the largest is going to be max that we defined up there. The range should also be, the smallest should also be 0, but then the largest should be our width that we defined up top, which is 500. So now we have this variable here. We could break this up into different lines. Remove these. It's the same thing. And then replace this with, or this function, and then use that variable that we used, and then you pass it that one element. So I'm not sure if this will work, but let's try it. Hey, look, it worked. So now the largest value is going to be the longest, or exactly 500, and then everything else is like adjusted. So now if I change this to like 700, this will still be 500 pixels, but all these will decrease because 700, or 20, 40, 50, 60 doesn't compare like these do over here. So we called the D3 function, D3.scale.linear, and then we gave it some settings. We said the smallest value that we should accept for this scale should be 0, and the largest value that we're going to accept for here is going to be the max of this array. And then the smallest output we should have should be 0, but the biggest output we should have should be 500, the width of the canvas. And then we replaced the function that we had, which just multiplied the element in the array by 10, and we used that width function, and you passed it that element. Now this is kind of strange because width here, we made it a variable, but we used width over here as a function. with parentheses and stuff. And really, I have no idea how that happens. I think that's just JavaScript or D3, where you can like define variables, but they have like functions in them. And it's just strange, but it works. All right. So now we need a function that creates a new color based on our data. So, if it's a small variable, it should be maybe blue. But if it's a big variable, like the largest one, it should be red. So we can do that with a scale. So we say, similar syntax over here, color equals D3 scale linear, with the domain being exactly the same. 0 max. But now the range, the output that we want, it's not going to be any number. It's going to be colors, blue, red. So now if we replace, actually we don't replace anything, we just add another attribute here to the bar, fill. We're going to fill each bar, and we're going to pass it, this thing. So if you do that, and then you refresh, the smaller ones will be, bluish, and the larger ones will be reddish. So now, it's not just a different width, it's a different color. I think that's pretty neat. So to see, this get a little more fun, you can replace the data with something more interesting. For example, you could say data equals, we're going to use 10 values, and they're all going to be the same thing. The same function, but they won't be the same. So there exists a function called mathRandom, which I think just like makes something between 0 and 1. Let's see, or return something between 0 and 1. Yeah. So some random decimal between 0 and 1. We're going to generate that 10 times. So that's 3 math random. That's 4 math random. It's 5. Copy that. 10. Okay, then we're going to change this so that the bars are touching each other. So now we're generating random data, and instead of 5 bars, we're making 10. And with those few changes, now we have, every time we refresh, the data changes, and we get a different graph. Questions? Okay, so that's as far as I plan to get today. There's still level 5 through 8 to go, but I'm going to save that for another day. We still have 30 more minutes, so I guess you could play around with this code. I'll get that video up, but that's all I got.
I guess one question would be how, like this code is written in CoffeeScript, and the data is written in CoffeeScript. How would we take data that's maybe in the database to display in this format?
You would use an API for that. I think I go into that into the future lessons, but yeah, you'd have to use something like D3.get, I think, and then pass it a URL, and then it'll return data, so you save it as data like that. I think that's how it works.
And then that would be one way of visualizing the data that's stored in the database.
Yeah, you wouldn't just be printing it to a table like you're used to. You'd be putting it in a bar graph or a pie chart or however you want. You can just look at the examples and look at their example code, copy that, and then change it to your liking. I like to play with this. Get bored after a minute, but it's pretty nice to see it changing.